well, you learn from everybody, and those who were pretty, in that area at that time, and what they call bebop or jazz, or what they were calling it at any period of time. Those were the musicians and drummers, especially that I listened to, and Elvin Jones was another favorite, but he was he brought a different, I'll say, style or sound in the way that he played that was somewhat different than other jazz drummers. So, but he was someone that you kind of had to get used to, hearing the way that he played. But after you got used to hearing and got a little better understanding of what he was doing, he was a very, very interesting drummer.
Yeah, so I heard people describe Elton Jones as being polyrhythmic.
Right.
But aren't most trap drummers polyrhythmic?
Most are, but not in the sense that he was at that time.
Right.
At that time, yeah, he really turned things in another direction for drummers. Yeah, he did. And as I said, Louis Hayes was as a matter of fact, he was one of the drummers that we stood outside in the back of the Crawford Grill and listened. I forget what group he was with, but
Horace Silver or Cannonball.
Cannonball.
Okay.
Yeah. And so he was another one that had an influence on me anyway. So because I liked his just the way that he and just hearing that, I wasn't really aware that he really still had a group at this time. So yeah, those were some of the ones that I listened to on a regular basis, and had the good fortune to see some of them during my time.
You had the good fortune of you saw him at the Crawford Grill and other places around town here.
I've seen him at the Crawford Grill once or twice, but any other times I've seen him was because I did spend a period of time in New York City, and I've seen him there.
All right.
Yeah.
So that time you spent in New York City was as a drummer.
Pretty much.
And who did you work with during that period?
Well, let me go back here. I first went to New York to kind of feel out or study or see, the music and listen and get a learning experience from that. And at that time, I was probably about 19 years old. I had a sister that lived there. She still lives there, actually. And I went up to New York and listened to the musicians there, and decided I needed to come back to Pittsburgh and try to learn my craft a little better. So that's what I did. And when I came back, I just played with whoever I could play with. Played with various groups, but I worked with Joe Westrate that had the Ebony Lounge, and he had he played organ in a little trio. Him and was a saxophone player, Art Nance.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and I worked with them. Matter of fact, that's where I learned a lot, because different musicians would come through and sit in. I think it was probably on Wednesdays he had that. I'm not sure, but I learned a lot from him, and I played with Kenny Fisher. He came along a little later. His name was he has the I forget what the name of his school is out here. His name James Johnson. Yeah.
Yeah, African American Music Institute.
Yeah. All right. As I said, there were just different, because I was more so freelancing, except with Joe Westry. I worked there, with him and he helped a lot of young musicians. So I learned a lot there. When I went back to New York, I pretty much had to start from scratch. And once again, my brother-in-law lived there, and he introduced me to. He was actually a teacher, a music teacher, but he taught group lessons in his home on Eastern Parkway in Brooklyn.
What was his name?
Rector Bailey.
Rector Bailey.
Rector Bailey, and he was good friends with Max Roach,
All right.
and that's how that's how I met Max Roach, because he came to Rector's house, because he, like I said, he would have a bass, piano, drums, and maybe a lead instrument. That, and then we would all play together and kind of learn like that. Yeah. And I did sit-in jobs, I would say, different ones with because George Benson was there at the time, and who else? The organ player, because I was with mostly organ groups at that time, because I went uptown, and you could go up there with there was a place up there called Wells Restaurant, and you could. I worked there for a while, and musicians would come through there and also sit in it, and they would have a singer that would. They changed singers, but maybe every couple of weeks. So Leon Thomas used to come there. He was one of the featured singers. And there was Jolie Wilson, and but the group itself was organ player. His name was Ernie Goldsmith, and a guitar player, the trio, and we worked with different people. And then I got a kind of a regular job with what's it? Jimmy McGriff. Jimmy McGriff. I worked because I worked with him for a while, and traveled with him a little bit. So because fortunately he was able to work his band right. He was also took care of business, and he would fortunately we were able to have a steady kind of job there. So that was a good experience. Then also, as I mentioned, Beaver Harris. He was in New York, and actually I stayed with him for a little while, and he got me the opportunity to go to Europe, but it was with a play actually, but there was with the group, it was like a 4-piece group, and it was a play called I think it was called like Slave Ship, something like that. Yeah. And
Imam Baraka.
So we went to Rome, Zurich, Switzerland, and Paris, and so that was a nice experience for me. And then because this was like I went to New York in going way back to 1965, and I spent 9 years there, and then I came back to Pittsburgh in 1974.
Oh, okay.
And
So you were in Brooklyn while you were there?
I lived in Brooklyn, but I stayed in Manhattan the longest on West 78th Street.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Because Beaver played for me a couple of times in Brooklyn in the early 70s.
Yeah, because when I lived with him, that's where we lived, in Brooklyn.
Yeah. So you know about this place called the East?
I've heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was the person booking the music there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's where Beaver played. 360-degree band.
Yeah, because he worked with Archie Shepp for a period of time.
Right, played with Archie in there, and then I booked him with his own band. Yeah. Well, I'm glad to know we had paths that cross.
Yeah.
So kind of, sort of. Did you ever have an opportunity to go to that place, the East?
I believe I did once or twice, but he was. They worked at Slug Saloon.
Slugs, yeah.
On East 4th Street somewhere. Yeah.
We are presenting Louis Hayes on December the 9th at the New Hazlitt Theater, and this is his tribute to Horace. He did a CD called Serenade for Horace.
Oh yeah.
And so he's bringing that band that he recorded that CD with, which is Abraham Burton, Steve Nelson, David Bryant, and Desron Douglas quintet. So we're presenting that on December the 9th, and we pray that, the community comes out and have the experience of another Lewis Hayes session.
Mm-hmm. And that, you said it's the 9th of December?
Yes,
Mhm.
Saturday, December the 9th.
Well, I'm glad to hear that Lewis Hayes is still making music. The culture of this music, the music itself, it seems like, that era, for whatever reason, is, I don't know if it's going to, I don't want to say it's going to disappear, but the artists at that time that were playing the music it just seemed to be a very unique era in music, what they call jazz, and it's just good to see that it's still going on. At least somebody's interested here in Pittsburgh anyway.
Yeah, well, hallelujah.
Yeah, yeah,
Hallelujah.
yeah.
Lewis is 80, and he's still keeping the fire burning. So, let us all pray to keep on keeping on like he and Roy Haynes. Roy Haynes is going 92.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's still playing. So.
Well, that gives me inspiration.
There you go. There you
I
go.
said, drums, they can keep you pretty active.
Mm-hmm.
Keep things working for you. So, but yeah, that's good to hear.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate this.
You're welcome.
And,
Thank you.
good to have the session.